Hi there, and welcome to Ian's Engage channel. I'm Ian. In a previous video, I described my plan for tackling the tricky bit of track work at the rear of the layout, behind the scenic breakboard. I had hoped to be much further on at implementing the plan, but unfortunately it has stalled, and I've done very little work on it at all. So, in this video, I'll try and explain why. If you take a look at the track plan, this one is version 35, you'll notice that there is an awful lot of point work in the area, which is there for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the point work exists to allow crossing over from the inner loop to the outer loop in multiple places. The points also facilitate transfer from either loop to any lane in the fiddle yard. There's also a diamond crossing to allow trains to pass directly from the inner loop to the branch line that services Shelfington railway station, and also allows a direct route between Shelfington and Mantlethorpe. The track work was also designed to allow swapping trains, so that when one train goes behind the scenic breakboard, another one can appear. All of this track work is obviously complicated and very tricky to add point motors and point rodding to, even when away from the layout, hence me calling it the tricky bit. I have to admit that I've struggled. Getting one push rod aligned to a tie bar within the brass tubing was quite easy. However, dealing with several of them which are required to service multiple points has proved to be quite impossible for me to achieve. Therefore, I felt that I needed to step back from the problem in order to progress. Now, this part of the track plan was created long ago, and well before Sill Harbour was envisioned. And this got me thinking, does this area of track work behind the scenic breakboard need to be so complicated? And I think the simple answer is no. No, it doesn't. So, I've pondered long and hard over the past few weeks and have decided to simplify everything in that area. This has led to the track plan evolving into version 39, which is on the screen now. As a quick aside, you may have noticed that other things have changed since version 35 of the track plan, such as the structure of Ledgetown Quarry, Mantlethorpe Marshalling Yard, Shelfington Goods Yard, and Sill Harbour Fiddle Yard. These changes have been made as a direct result of the derailment investigations I've performed previously, which I'll explain in a different video that should be out in the next few weeks. Right, back to the changes to the track plan behind the scenic breakboard. As you can see, when I say I've simplified things, I'm not lying. The majority of points in the area have gone. The diamond crossing has gone. Most of the crossovers have gone. Obviously, this has removed some functionality from the layout, such as the ability to switch between inner and outer loops behind the scenic breakboard. The small fiddle yard is no longer a fiddle yard, and consists of only one passing loop on the inner loop. I'd have loved to have kept the fiddle yard, but with the introduction of the larger one behind Sill Harbour Station, I thought it was better to remove it. However, there are some advantages to doing things this way. For instance, space has been freed up to allow implementation of longer lanes on either side of the passing loop, meaning longer trains can be stored. The simplification of the point work means everything will be so much easier to wire and will eventually make automation of the area much simpler, as blocks can be identified and isolated much more easily. The reduction in the number of points should also help with keeping the trains running, as it reduces the number of possible failure points on the layout. I think this is an especially important factor in this area of the layout, which is particularly difficult to reach and will be difficult to maintain should anything go wrong. I also think the layout makes a little more sense in terms of operations now. Of course, we've still got the outer loop, which has been considerably simplified and no longer has the ability to swap to the inner loop behind the scenic breakboard. The inner loop is also still in place, and both loops will allow continuous running of trains as and when required. The inner loop can still be diverted through Mantlethorpe station area when needed to, and is also an essential route for access to Mantlethorpe Marshalling Yard and Ledgetown Quarry areas. Talking of routes, I thought it would be a useful exercise to go through a few possible routes between various locations, which may help to understand my reasoning. Removing the multiple crossovers and the diamond crossing means that there is now only one route between Mantlethorpe and Shelfington stations, and although more convoluted, it seems more realistic to me. The introduction of Sill Harbour has vastly improved the operational value of the layout as a whole. For instance, a passenger train can now travel between Mantlethorpe and Sill Harbour and can then travel onwards towards Shelfington. In terms of goods and mineral operations, a train can be released from the marshalling yard at Mantlethorpe, do as many circuits of the inner loop as necessary before being released towards Shelfington goods yard. If I can diverge from the main topic of the video for a moment, away from the area behind the scenic breakboard, a goods train could also be set to travel between Sill Fish Market and Shelfington goods yard fairly directly. Direct passenger service could include Shelfington to Mantlethorpe, or Shelfington to Sill Harbour. As you can see, there are quite a lot of possibilities. In terms of automation, it would be nice to be able to set up shuttle service for these more direct routes and let the computer control the back and forth while I get on with the fun stuff like shunting wagons around in the marshalling yard and running my Pullman service around the loops. Thinking on a bit more of a grander scale, the introduction of Sill Harbour has allowed for a third loop. I'll call this Sill Harbour Loop for now, as it breaks away from the outer loop in order to divert around Sill Harbour, via the castle on the hill, through the fiddle yard and back onto the outer loop. There's also the much longer term project of the Shelfington to Shelfington line that will run all the way around the outside of the layout. The plan is to eventually have this join up in a loop in an area I'm tentatively calling Fiddletown, where I aim to have a much larger fiddle yard, but I'm probably about a decade away from implementing that if my current pace is anything to go by. I've already started the process of printing the new track plan, trimming it to size and putting it in place to determine where I need to cut the piece of foam. So, as far as implementing these changes, I think the plan as discussed in the original Planning the Tricky Bit video, which was number 57 if you'd like to take a look, still stands. The area will still be split into 5 sections that can be modelled away from the layout for convenience and will then be joined together when brought back to the train room. The sections will be split slightly differently to the original plan, but that shouldn't pose any problems. Other than I'll need to cut some new foam pieces, as I've already cut foam to the sizes as discussed in the original plan. Okay, so that's about it for this update. If you've got any hints, tips, useful tools or techniques to pass on to a beginner in N-Gauge modelling, or if you simply want to say hello, then please do so in the comment section. Anything and everything you've got to say will be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, thanks ever so much for watching. Hopefully I'll have another update on my progress soon. Bye.